Today is January 28th. It's the 28th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. Born on this day in 1912, artist Jackson Pollock. Pollock is born in Cody, Wyoming. He grows up in California and then follows his older brother Charles to New York City, where he studies art at the Art Students League. He struggles to find his voice and pay the bills at the same time, and he struggles with alcohol. In 1938, he's one of many artists hired by President Roosevelt's WPA, the Great Depression-era Works Program. In 1943, Pollock gets his big break, a commission to paint a mural for patron Peggy Guggenheim for the hallway of her new townhouse. 2 years later, in 1945, he marries artist Lee Krasner, and the two of them move out to East Hampton on Long Island, buying a cheap farmhouse on 5 acres of land with a loan from Peggy Guggenheim. The farm has a small barn that Pollock converts into his artist studio. It's a big square room with no heat. It gets so cold in the winter that his paint freezes. It's the perfect environment for a tortured artist. And Jackson Pollock is a tortured artist if ever there was one. His is a life of hard drinking and hard living. He paints on a large scale, massive canvases he lays on the studio floor and approaches from all angles, drizzling, dribbling, spilling, and dumping paint in a seemingly haphazard fashion. But it is, in fact, a well-practiced technique that he uses to fling paint on the canvas in controlled chaos, from which meaning emerges. Jackson Pollock never gets his drinking under control despite long stretches of abstinence. In 1956, Pollock is driving drunk near his home on Long Island. His friends would say of him that he approaches driving as a form of expression, sometimes expressing his anger as speed. He drives off the road and dies in the resulting car crash, a major figure in abstract expressionism, dead at the age of 44. Jackson Pollock sells very little work in his time in comparison to his output, but in death, his work grows to be of great value, in large part due to the tight controls his wife, Lee Krasner, places on the posthumous sales of his work. She personally directs the sale of his paintings, holding some back until the time is right, pushing others to generate demand. Pollock's violent death at the age of 44 only serves to enhance his mythic stature in the art world. It's only then that prices are driven up for his work, and it's the beginning of the art market of the modern time. Paintings he could hardly sell for a few $1,000s in his life, sell for millions after his death. And they still do. Single Jackson Pollock paintings have reportedly changed hands for as high as $140 million and $200 million. A ridiculous amount of money for some dribbles of paint on a canvas. But a Jackson Pollock painting is so much more than that. You might look at one of his paintings and think, what is it? What the hell's his painting about? But to understand a Pollock, you have to look inward. A Jackson Pollock painting is not about what you're looking at. It's about what's happening to you while you're looking at it. When asked about his unique style, Jackson Pollock, born on this day in 1912, states that technique is just a means of arriving at a statement. Quote, "It doesn't make much difference how the paint is put on, as long as something's being said." Yesterday, we talked about the Apollo 1 launch pad fire that takes the lives of astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. 19 years later, on this day in 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger lifts off from Cape Canaveral, Florida. 73 seconds after liftoff, Challenger explodes and disintegrates 48,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean, killing all 7 astronauts on board: Commander Francis Scobie, pilot Michael Smith, mission specialists Ronald McNair, Ellison Onizuka, and Judith Resnick, payload specialist Gregory Jarvis, and a school teacher from New Hampshire, Krista McAuliffe. The cause of the explosion is later determined to be the failure of an O-ring, a gasket used to seal a joint in the solid rocket boosters that carry the shuttle up into orbit. A member of the Presidential Commission investigating the accident, physicist Richard Feynman, demonstrates how O-rings lose their integrity in temperatures below 50 degrees Fahrenheit when he immerses a sample of the O-ring material in a glass of water during a televised hearing. Flaws in NASA's organizational culture and decision-making process are blamed for the accident. Managers ignoring engineers' warnings about the low temperatures on the morning of the launch. President Reagan is scheduled to give his State of the Union address on this day in 1986. He postpones the address following the accident and instead addresses the nation from the Oval Office. With a speech written by Peggy Noonan that includes a quote from poet John Gillespie Magee, Reagan provides the first of many eulogies when he says of the 7 Challenger astronauts, quote, "We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them, this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God." There are 337 days left in the year.